Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Marty.
And we do this podcast ideally we try to do it every week. Some weeks we don't manage to pull it off, but most weeks we do it every week. And it's all about aquaponic cannabis growing and some of the cannabis news, some of the stuff little on legislation, grow techniques, and general stuff on aquaponics, just a general aquaponic cannabis grow show, all things around that. So, Marty, why don't you tell us what you got? Why don't you tell us what you got going on?
Actually, hopefully later today. Maybe not till tomorrow. But either today or tomorrow, I'm gonna get all the lumber delivered to build another outdoor setup back in the gazebo. Pretty much like I did last year, except for just gonna build a fish tank as opposed to have an aquarium. So it'll have a little more insulation around it, and hopefully be able to keep the water a little cooler, not have to do quite as many water exchanges in order to keep the temperature down, which was definitely a problem when it's like 110 degrees outside for a week straight. It creates some temperature issues. So last year I did a lot of water exchanges, like every other day, just did like a 50% water exchange with cold water, especially on those really hot weeks. And I could keep the temperature down pretty good just in a regular aquarium. So I'm hoping to just not have to do that as much and be able to keep that going. So that's going to be fun. So I'm going to get all that stuff moved out and then be able to set up the indoor again. I just got a bunch of new clones in. So that's going to be nice to see some new strains in. I have a kind of like a mystery cheese cross that's going to be kind of fun to grow. It got pollinated. We got just one seed off of that blue cheese plant from the outdoor last year and randomly pollinated from who knows where. So didn't hermaphrodite or anything on the plant. Everything looked clean and all that, and it's still just one seed. So I must have had a neighbor somewhere maybe that had a hermaphrodite. I mean, I know that at least there's like 4 other people on this block that grow. So that's kind of what I'm guessing. Probably my neighbor is what I'm thinking. But anyway, nobody really knows what it's from. I basically only know it's half blue cheese. And my buddy popped the seed for me. And took off, looks great, looks healthy. Put a clone in the flower, it's definitely female. So gonna flower it out, see what happens. I've got probably like 4 clones of that. That'll be interesting to see, kind of a fun little experiment that I'll run here in the next couple of months. So getting ready to get all that stuff done, but I gotta build the outdoor and shift a few things around, and then I'll be able to set up the indoor with all those clones. And then I have for the soil garden, I'm going to have 6 plants out there, and I've got Starfighter Pheno that I'm going to put out there that I got from him, and that was the bud that I showed you. I don't know where I put it now. I just had it. Here we go. So he brought me a little. This is from his indoor probiotic grow. He's a big probiotic grower. So I have that to set up, so I'll be able to get those in and start shooting some videos on some new content. But other than that, it's just been pretty much the same old around here work and planning my next project. Finally got it all ordered up and got stuff delivered, so should be here hopefully this afternoon, and then I can get started. How about you? What you got going on?
That's cool. We've been running around trying to get some another project under. We have 2 other projects we're working on down here, and we're trying to get them done up under the university license, so that we can get started right away. Since we're having, when the government changed down here, it screwed up some of our land applications and some of our, and it just super delayed the commercial export part, the commercial production part of everything here. So. Because that's going to take probably 3 to 6 months. We weren't expecting that because the government only changed by 1 seat of parliament. No one was really expecting that to change. We're going to now, we're trying to work with a university down here. We'll find out. I have a meeting with them. I think it's the end of next week, at the beginning of the following week, over in Kingston, about working together with them under their program. I'll hopefully be able to get some video of. They have a small aquaponic cannabis grow right now that they have. It's pretty interesting. So hopefully we're gonna get some video for that for you guys. That's been really fun. And we've also been doing a little bit of training with some of the guys that we'll be working with, just teaching them some stuff that, grow techniques and stuff like that that they weren't exposed to being in Jamaica.
What kind of size?
I actually don't know yet. I haven't had a chance to do it. I only yesterday got invited over to go see it, and that's over in Kingston, so that's on the opposite end of where I'm at right now. I'm over just outside of Montego Bay at the moment, where I'm working at. So it's about 2 hours drive, 2.5 hours drive. So I'll wait till my next trip over to Kingston to pop in there, since they gave us pretty much an open invite to go see that part. And then we have a meeting with the head of the cannabis program, the head of the aquaponics division, and the head of the science division over there about working together on a project down here. So that'll be really, really awesome. If that all works out the way it should be. Otherwise, I won't. Once it goes through, I'll have a lot more details on that. I do have another cool thing to formally announce. I got permission to formally announce finally. So I am working with Green Leaf Incorporated, that real giant aquaponic cannabis grow you guys have seen up in Canada. I'm now doing a whole bunch of consulting work for them, helping them getting their stuff even more accelerated past what they were able to accomplish before. So it's been fun and learning a lot about some of the different things that they were doing and everything like that. So it's been a great opportunity, and I just wanted to mention them. And if you guys happen to be up in Toronto, especially once everything legalizes in the spring, definitely go check them out. I'll post some pictures and try to do some blogs or something as I'm able to with them. Just have to get permission with everything from them first.
Their website is pretty cool too. I think that's the website that you sent me before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got some pretty cool info on there too. I mean, it's all pretty, some generic stuff. But,
yeah.
But it is pretty cool. You just want to get an idea about the company.
Yeah, right now they're the largest indoor cannabis grow on the planet, or indoor aquaponic grow on the planet. The largest. When the construction finishes, it'll be the largest aquaponic grow when their new building is finished. So it's pretty neat. So I've been working with them the last couple of weeks. I haven't been able to talk about it. Well, I've been able to hint about it, but I couldn't mention it. But yeah, I got permission to do all that. So if you guys have any questions about that, that's been really fun and exciting to do. What else? We have a big meeting with the university, and then the licensing thing's just been a headache. So we're trying to work with the university and see if we can't use one of the research licenses and get things going a little sooner.
Nice. How big is their grow?
The one up in Canada?
Yeah.
I think their total gross square footage is 590,000 square feet across the whole facility, although part of that's not finished construction yet. So that's how big the whole facility is, but they're not finished. I think they have 290 square feet or something like that that's finished at the moment. I have to double check what it is. But
nice.
Running some pretty big systems up there.
What kind of systems are they running? Like how many? I mean, we talked about this in a previous episode a little bit, how obviously we wouldn't build one big system, but do they have like a number of plans that they split up? Like do they have like 30 plans per system, or how do they I
don't know how much about that kind of stuff I'm allowed to talk about as far as details. And I don't want to say anything that's going to get me in trouble, but I can say that they have like a separate, areas from others versus production systems and clones and all that stuff. I could say that. But the rest of it's kind of system details that I'm not sure they want shared. So as soon as I'll find out about that. And then I'm actually trying to get permission to post some pictures of their stuff the way they have it set up. So once they're cool with that, I'm going to post some more details on all that stuff. So it'd be pretty great. But yeah, in fact, I was able to show you one of the pictures I was allowed to show privately, and yeah, it was pretty neat just to see some of their stuff. In fact, I think it was the same one they have up on their website now that I think about it. If you go on their website, they have some pictures of their grow, of the way it's set up. So yeah, it's pretty neat. But I can't give away system details at the moment without getting permission. But yeah, we are working together, and that's one of the reasons why we're hopefully be able to get in with this university pretty quickly as well. They reached out to us when we found out we were working with them and that we were down here, so that worked out real well.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been really fun, especially just seeing so much different landrace down here. The last week or two, I've been able to see a bunch of different farms that were much better. I was able to film from that one. I have another farm in a different area that's actually currently growing under the medical license that I'll hopefully be able to get permission to film at. I think we're going to be able to, but I can't 100% say that. So we should have some films of two other things that we're working on down here that are currently legal. One over the university and one that's through one of the university licenses that we'll be able to visit. I'm hoping to be able to get film from both of them. I know the university one will be no problem, but the other one I just got to double check. But yeah, just to show you some other aquaponic systems, commercial grade down in Jamaica. Actually, one of them may not be aquaponic, but the other one definitely is. I got to double check. But we're going to be working with the one guy over here and somewhere on the east end of the island, north end of the island, setting up a aquaponic warehouse if everything goes as planned. We'll have a nice big warehouse up here on the north coast as well, aside from some outdoor stuff. So it'll be a nice area to keep up the mothers and everything. We've got a hurricane or something, we can keep everything. We could quickly bring everything in as much as possible, from the, at least the stuff that's movable, and be able to keep, something to keep going once post hurricane and all that, which we are doing hurricane plans now for all of our stuff, all of our properties while we're building them out, just because it makes sense too.
I've seen a lot of people use shipping containers a lot, just because for like bedrooms and mother rooms and stuff like that, so that obviously like like we talked about before, you can veg inside and then throw it outside whenever you want it to flower.
Yep.
So a lot of times especially down there where you can flower 365 days a year pretty much, like that's a big advantage when you have weather that can come through like that. Obviously you don't want to get wiped out, so they just stuff everything they can into the shipping container and close it up, wait for the storm to pass, and then pull it all back out. So you'll see like
pretty much
like I won't say who, but down on the Northern California coast, you can get some pretty extreme weather come through, especially a lot of winds. Sometimes also maybe for helicopter flyovers, it can be particularly valuable. And so that's what you'll see is you'll see like a field, and then you'll see like 4 or 5 shipping containers in a row. And that's a pretty good indication that, that's what they're there for. And so it works quite well. So if anybody's looking to do or set up something like that, shipping containers are a great way because they can just bring them out, plop them down, and obviously they're going to survive any weather that's going to get thrown at you. And so I was just thinking about that the other day when Alan posted to the PFA group about setting up his shipping containers down there. He's doing them in a rectangle, which is a little different, but yeah, most of the time I saw them, they were just like spaced out in a field. But that's been a pretty common practice for a while down there on the coast for various reasons, I guess we'll say, weather and authority figures alike.
We've been building down here where we have it all set up to where there'll be bamboo trellising everything that's tied together. So you'll have this huge, trellising, and it'll be all made of bamboo that can be used to basically like bolt the plants to the ground. So yeah, they're going to get ripped up or tore up or whatever, but if it's, as long as they're still earlier in the plant stage, they'll bounce back. I've actually seen pictures. One of our growers had pictures from before and after the last hurricane came through. And what they do is when the hurricane comes through, they take all the plants and they stomp them back down in the ground. They like till it in. And then the next, they all come up and the plants are much shorter, but everything comes up raging because it dumps all this fresh nutrients down on the fields. So that's usually one of their heavier harvests. So just the individual plant size is smaller. But we're not going to have to deal with that kind of thing as far as the soil wash and all that, because they'll all be in troughs. But it will be interesting to see how it holds everything down. What's that?
Are you still looking at local bamboo to use for some of your, I know you were talking about using it for.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing some bamboo systems, where we're taking hollowed out bamboo and basically building like gutter systems that'll work just like an NFT, and running them that way for herbs and that kind of thing. We're going to be growing a bunch of kitchen herbs and stuff down here because there's a pretty good profit margin on them too. And we want to have a little grocery store where we can sell the fish and have some, everything you need to buy a meal kind of like in a little kit, it'll come with like peppers and seasoning and the whole nine, and have everything you want at the grocery store too. It'll be like a little fresh food shop. So cannabis isn't the only thing that we're working on down here. It's just the main thing that we're working on as far as production. But the herbs and stuff are pretty easy. All the lettuce stuff is easy. Nothing that's not been done 1,000 times before.
Like the hollowed out bamboo, mm-hmm. If you sealed it really well, like as opposed to a gutter style, do you think it would work for like, like let's say, do you think it would be able to be airtight enough to be able to handle a siphon, for instance?
Oh, you could totally make because the bamboo has little walls in the center that separate the sections. You could totally make a bamboo bell siphon. We haven't tried to make one yet, but I was going to try it just for shits and giggles and see how that works out.
Right. Well,
what we're doing for the gutter with the channels is there's a piece, the way the bamboo's cut, I'm trying to think of. So you have your glass, and what we do is we cut the top half of the lower one out. So the receiving one will have this part cut out so that the other one can kind of sit halfway in it, or with a little slit in it so it can squeeze in, with the top part cut off so that it kind of slides into the other one. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but like if you had two folded pieces of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of seat one into the other.
I always like to do external siphons, so I was wondering if you would be able to essentially do the same kind of thing, where if you had one, like let's say you had one tilted sideways like this, would you be able to essentially drill a hole in the top here and put one down into it and be able to seal it enough here so that you would be able to, use it almost to replace PVC pipe in terms of like.
Yeah, that's what our game plan is, to try and use it. We're gonna have to use PVC for the fill lines going from the pump to the beginning of each line, but once it's able to go to gravity feed, we're gonna be basically using bamboo instead. Yeah, we're gonna probably have to replace it every 3 or 4 years, but it's I mean, we have some of our properties that we're working on are just, there's whole forest sections of it. We can go out and cut it for free. So for how cheap it is, it's worth a little bit of labor and the fact that it'll have to be replaced, every couple of years. But it's not a big deal,
Right.
For how much cheaper it is, at least until, that could pay for it until they can replace it with PVC. Just that PVC piping is so expensive down here. We're trying to find ways to say, especially for how big we're looking to build some of these farms down here, we're trying to find a way to make it a little more cost effective.
Well, plus when you think about it, there's some bamboo will grow 6 to 8 feet every 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's just in a patch. So I mean, you could essentially grow it, be growing it and using it, and not really have to, rely on anything else to be able to supply that stuff for you, because it's going to last basically as long as it takes to grow it. If you grow a whole patch of them to 8 feet tall, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 of them. that you'll be able to use until your next batch is ready to go. So I'm always down for sustainable things like that. I'm not sure you can make the same argument for PVC.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't tried running it long term yet. I know some people have. I've seen a couple people use it for vertical grow stuff, but we're gonna try using it for these trough methods. I'll once we have that all put together. We have a couple of prototypes we're tinkering around with, but once we have one that is bigger scale that we're starting construction on, we'll know for sure. Then we're basically waiting on the permitting stuff for the cannabis so that we know where to start first, and then once we know which farm's going to start construction first, we'll move our equipment over there and start. But it might not even be until next trip to Jamaica now. It kind of sucks because this licensing thing has turned into a complete nightmare for me. So it's really just been kind of a headache, but it's coming around. They're supposedly having some meetings on some of that stuff this week. And we'll find out some more. We're just trying to make sure that what the government's trying to do is they're trying to make sure that the Rastas who have been persecuted and all this stuff for a long time are making sure that they're getting their share of it. And the other part of it is that the licensing board asked for $1 million in funds to pay for like application fees, staff, and all that stuff, the paperwork end of it for just putting together a licensing situation for an entire country. And they only got $250,000, which is all they had to give them at the time because they're having a little bit of a budget crisis at the moment. So they'd only got a quarter of the amount of funding that they were supposed to get. So that's really screwed everything up, along with the unexpected change in government and before they had started issuing like pre-approval for permits if you had filed and got your application in and everything like that, which is why I flew down here. They were supposed to be able to start taking the final set of formal applications on April 4th originally, and they were going to start issuing early permits or I forget what they were calling them, but basically an early permit before them. But then the government changed by one seat. They put in a new Minister of Justice, and then everything else. So it's been kind of crazy. So now we're going the university route, and we're hoping that'll fix all of our issues.
Nice.
So the other, I figured we had a good topic for today. Sorry about last week being a little bit short and sloppy. I just wanted to apologize to everyone for that one. This week I want to talk about some pest control options. Maybe not hit everything, but maybe touch on a couple of like general preventative measures or what your kind of go-tos are for some common problems. Maybe a short list of beneficials that we like to use, and talk about that. I know you earlier were talking about root rot and stuff. Maybe that would be a good one to touch on. You had that root rot treatment you did. It seemed to work well for you, and you posted pictures and stuff of it from last year. So.
Yeah, I definitely in the outdoor last year ran into some high temperatures. I think it was like 110 for about a week straight, and so we had one plant that after we transplanted it in the aquaponic system, I had it in soil. It was in pretty good shape, but it was root bound already in its small pot. I just had kind of inherited it from somebody else who didn't need it anymore and didn't really have a place to put it. And, so anyway, we transplanted it and ended up being in some hot weather and transplanted it, and the water temperature got up pretty high, so it developed root rot. And it basically the entire plant went to bed. It was fine. I came out the next day, and the entire plant was just completely shriveled. And looked like it hadn't had water in weeks, but obviously it was in the aquaponic system, so it clearly did. Okay, somebody's calling me. Don't know who that is. So anyway, the whole thing, except for one small branch on the side, was completely shriveled up, and basically it had root rot. So the whole thing just was bad, except for one branch. And so what I decided to do was, I had figured it was probably root rot. I knew the water temperature had been a little bit high, and was doing water exchanges to bring it down and other stuff. So I took the plant out, cleaned up. You can tell all the root rot will look brown as opposed to white roots, and it'll be like slimy. Obviously, there'll be fish poop on roots in aquaponic system, especially if you're using beds. So I just pulled off basically anything that looked like unhealthy roots, and I actually cut everything except for the one branch off. And then I rinsed or sort of dipped the roots in garlic water. And so I just chopped up garlic and boiled it for probably about maybe 2-3 minutes, really not very long at all. And then I just turn it off and let it sit for about probably about 3 to 4 hours as it cools off. And then that's pretty much all I do for a very basic garlic water extraction. Then I just go and dip the roots in that, cleaned it all up so there's nothing but white roots left. And then I use the garlic water to rinse out the bed. I decoupled it from the system and washed the garlic water through the bed, flooded it out, and then replanted everything back in. And the plant ended up making it, and was only about 2 feet tall, but yielded about 3.5 ounces and some really good buds. So I'm glad that worked out. But garlic is a great way to be able to treat roots without really causing any sort of damage. You will obviously destroy some bacteria in your beds, but obviously if you've got bad bacteria in there in terms of things you want to get rid of, you sort of take the good with the bad. And then what I did is I re-inoculated with worm tea. So basically after I got everything up and going again and got everything coupled back to the system, I poured in probably about a half gallon of worm juice, if you will, just all over the bed and tried to spread it out as much as I could, and really soak all the media to try and re-inoculate the bed. And it seemed to work just fine.
I've had really good luck upping the DO of the systems with root rot. Also adding Bacillus subtilis to the system, which is like your probiotic chicken, or it's also the main ingredient in products like Serenade. It smells a little bit like dirty feet or like stinky feet, but it's perfectly fine. It's a natural occurring microbe in your soil. It just happens to really love. It'll live just fine in water, at least as far as propagating. And it really loves to seek out fungal spores, especially in the root zones. Another thing you were mentioning earlier is that plants that are heat stressed, especially the roots are heat stressed, are a little more susceptible. That's definitely something else to think about, is making sure your water temperatures aren't too high, especially in smaller outdoor systems. I know if your fish tank's in direct sunlight, that thing can heat up a lot more than you'd realize. Putting a little digital temperature thing in there, it monitors your up and down and all that. Will give you a real good idea of finding out what's going on and making sure that you're not fluctuating your temperature too much. That's going to be a good, real big cause, if not is the biggest cause of disease outbreak in aquaponic systems, aside from pH fluctuation. Another way to prevent heat stress or make your plants a little more resilient to heat stress is to use silica. Same thing with salt. If you have a little high in salt in your water, the silica helps a lot with both of those things, heat stress and silica stress, or heat stress and salinity stress. It makes the plants much more able to tolerate it. The other nice thing, aquaponic plants especially also do well with heat. I know our greenhouse once in a while, back in Colorado, we get up to 100, 105, even with the sides open and fans blowing, just because it's so hot some days. And if we had kept that silica up and keep the water temperature a little, cool enough, especially if you're doing, high heat, if you're especially in the south or something like that, you don't want to put insulation between your tank and your ground. You want to wick all that extra heat from your beds, from the heat of the day, into the ground. Whereas in the north, like in Colorado or northern latitudes, you really want to insulate that, insulate your ponds and your fish tanks from the ground, and making sure that you are able to maintain, keep them warm in the winter, but it does hurt you a little bit in the summer. Although what you can do is run a metal coil. You can take like your flexible gas line, And you can run that down into the ground underneath your greenhouse or next to your greenhouse below frost line, and run that down where it's 50 or 60 degrees as a closed loop running to another one over in your tank. And you can actually use it as like a thermal wick, and actually wick heat off of your system and put that on a thermostat so that if your water gets too warm, you can actually put glycol in there, just plant sugar, perfectly harmless if it happens to get into the water. And you can use that in reverse, the way some people do with like compost heaps.
Right.
Instead, you can basically wick the heat off into the ground and cool your system that way for very, very low cost. Just the cost of the DC pump to run, especially if you're running solar, you can run that pump, low DC powered pump like that just on a solar panel. It won't cost you nothing. And that's a great way to deal with that. But in aquaponics especially, you have all that extra water in the bottom, so the plants can always keep drinking. Just make sure your magnesium and your silica levels are maintained so that they can pull all those nutrients up through the plant.
Yeah, that's cool. And I definitely am hoping that insulating the tank here, for me, in the summertime at least, is going to be for heat. If I was trying to run year round, then we still get pretty cold here too. So it's definitely kind of a back and forth. But like obviously in the dead of summer, I wouldn't want to be hooked up to a compost heater.
Yeah.
So while they work great, it'd have to be something that I could decouple from the system when I didn't want to use it, which is important, because if you're going to try and run your system, like if I tried to run it here, it would, a compost heater in the dead of summer would just it would be cooking the fish as opposed to So make sure to keep that in mind if you're in any place that has seasons, I guess. With a drastic change like we do here, we happen to be right in sort of that banana belt where, there's times where we'll get, 6 to 12 inches of snow for, maybe not that much, but we will still get enough to be able to cause issues, and it'll still get really cold. Like a lot of times it doesn't snow a lot here because it's such a big valley and the mountains around soak up so much of that. But it'll be, 10, 12 degrees for 2 weeks at a time in the dead of winter. Or sometimes it's even early. It's getting a little more sporadic, obviously. But last year, I left just some water in one of the fish tanks out back to kind of gauge, how much it would freeze, kind of whether or not I could leave something back there. And within, I think probably like the beginning of December, I had like 2 inches of ice on the top of the tank. And it wasn't moving or anything like that. So obviously there are different things that you could do it. But it would be great to have a way to decouple something, or use something like you were talking about. The sort of the geothermal effect will work either way, since underground it's always pretty much the same temperature. It's always going to be chasing back to whatever one you need. So I think that's probably the better option, in my opinion, I guess.
How we had it set up in our greenhouse was that we had a manifold box at the end, and I had valves, or I could shut off the input and output on every single line going in and out. So some of them were for heating, some of them were for cooling. We had the whole north wall was all a big compost heap that had mulch that we would put lye in and circulate it. We had coils that we could lift up, circulate underneath, lift up that one, circulate in between, and then flop it all down and then bury it all again on the north wall, where we had also the sheet metal, the corrugated metal, that works real well as well. And then we could pull heat off that wall as well as the heat coming off the decomposition. And that would valve off in the summertime, obviously. And then we also had solar heaters, just like you would solar water heaters for a house. In fact, they were recycled from somebody's house for the drinking water, for their shower, I think it was. Pulled it off a roof in Boulder, and they were mounted in the yard next to it. And how that would work is if in the wintertime, when the water temperature inside those panels would get warmer than the water temperature inside the greenhouse, then the motor would turn on and the pump would turn on, and that would circulate the water through there so that you could pull that hot water and heat that greenhouse in the wintertime, and make until it hit a certain temperature, and then it would shut back off. And that worked really, really well for dramatically reducing the heat costs of the water in the wintertime. It just requires you to have a little extra space in the property because you got to put these big solar water heaters up that look kind of like solar panels. But it works really well if you're trying to run at low energy.
Solar panels, right? You're just converting it to heat as opposed to electricity. Yep. Which is cool. And I think I'm going to build one just as an experiment. I think that maybe I can keep like one tank or something out back. I thought about doing it last year, but I really had a bunch of other stuff going on. We were harvesting and trimming and all that stuff.
A lot of times you can get them free on Craigslist. It'll be like free if you get it off the roof. So you just climb up there, you unbolt it, you make sure you have it tied off to a tree on a ratchet or whatever, so that once you take the thing off, it doesn't just slide off the front of the house. And you just lower it real slow off the front. That's how we did it. We took the gutter off and just lowered it down the front of the house. We got 8, I think it was 8 of them we got for free that way. We only ever mounted up, I think, 2 or 3 of them, but if we had mounted all 8 of them, it would work well.
I have those sample chunks of greenhouse material that they sent me so that I can measure them against the frame back here. And they're not really usable for anything else. I mean, they're only like, 6 feet by 4 feet or something like that. And so I'm going to use those as just to cover a frame with a black hose inside, and probably put like maybe whiteboard or something on the back of it that's a little more reflective, and I don't know, maybe paint it black. I'm not sure. Haven't really decided yet. But I'm going to cover the face of that to seal it up so that it gets that sort of air pocket insulation going on, and then just run a line through it on a timer. So as opposed to worrying about temperature sensors or anything like that, it'll just I'll pump water. Essentially, the idea is you pump water into it and you let it sit for long enough to let it heat up, however long that is, and then pump it out however long it takes to cycle out that water, and then let it set again.
Are you going to run system water, or are you going to run it through a closed loop? Because it'll work a lot better in a closed loop than it will if you're running system water, because you get all kinds of weird stuff growing in there if you don't otherwise.
You mean it just like another tank that's inside of the tank, essentially? So you'd run it separate?
Yeah, so instead of heating the water that's in the tank directly, you're just running a heat exchanger. So run the water through the heat panel, and then instead of that water, the input and output going directly into the tank, it's going to be on one of those like metal gas lines that I was talking about. That works perfectly fine. It's stainless steel, or not stainless steel, but it's perfectly safe as far as leaching and all that stuff. You can run a loop of that through into your water, put a coil at the bottom, and then just loop it back up to the top, and then fill that with glycol, which is just the plant-based sugar. Cheapest one to get out there, if you're looking for one that's fish safe and all that, is to use the RV potable water freeze line water stuff for your potable water lines, and it's just a plant-based glycol. You can also use the same glycol used for tincture making. It works just as well. The advantage to that is it won't freeze, and you don't have to worry about blowing up your lines and blowing up your heater panel and all that stuff. Because if you just run the water through and it freezes in the winter, the whole thing's toast. With the glycol, you don't have to purge it. You don't have to worry about what season it is. You can just forget about it once the system's set up in closed loop. It just takes a little bit to purge it at the end.
Sounds good.
But it works a lot better, and it's a lot less maintenance long run. Plus, it's less corrosive than running water in there, so it'll last a few extra years.
Sounds good. Probably a little easier in the pump too.
Yeah, well, it's a little more viscous, so I guess it's a little harder on the pump in that regard. But the fact that you don't have to worry about, if it's freezing or not and all that stuff, and you can just, if you get a cold night or something and you aren't expecting it, you don't have to worry about the whole thing cracking or having to replumb the whole thing or blowing a line or a hose somewhere. It just prevents a lot of random line breaking.
Well, I mean, especially opposed to system water, obviously, it's going to be a lot easier than system water would be. That's obviously, regardless of how the clouds filter is, you're still going to have some going through that pump anyway. So
yeah,
And I'm sure there's, lots of ways to get around that too. But eventually I want to build an airlift pump too, which is, pretty cool. I've got a couple ideas for that. I just haven't had time to mess around with it.
They're cool. They just don't scale anywhere near as well as some other types of pumps. Like as far as gallons per hour, it's hard to get a high GPH out of them unless you run 2 or 3 of them, kind of next to each other, which isn't a big deal.
Yeah, I think I want to try it just for like the novelty of it almost, and to be able to run a completely like a low power solar system, for instance. I think would be cool since you essentially are just running an air pump, which can consume a lot less power than your standard small aquarium pump.
There's some real cool videos from I think it's called Alamana Gardens or Alamana, something like that. And YouTube, you can YouTube it. They have a whole bunch of cool different airlift designs and stuff like that. He's got a bunch of cool YouTube videos and how-tos and stuff on there if you guys are looking to learn more. I think that's one of the better sources I've found for airlift stuff. In fact, yeah. I think I sent you a couple of videos on that one from that guy. Memory serves me right.
Yeah, I think so. Somebody sent it to me anyway. I've definitely been through them, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, which is kind of a neat thing about, I guess, using airlift is that, like you were saying, it doesn't scale necessarily real well. Like if you want to move a lot of water, it's probably not ideal. But if you want to move a little bit of water a long ways, like for vertical systems, for instance, where you want to pump water up in the air, but still be able only to use, one pump in the system, so you don't have to like stage anything or, do any weird stuff like that. So for vertical systems, I can definitely see it being a big advantage, especially if you had media beds also, or, obviously really good filtration of some kind, to be able to use those type of beds in a normal system. It sort of opens that up to where, you can pump a small amount of water very far up and not have to worry about solids clogging a small nozzle. So I think there are definitely cool aspects to it, but you're still, I think probably the main issue that I have with it is that you're still using a larger gauge, very small portion of a very large gauge pipe, whereas you'd be able to move a lot more water through a 3/4 inch pipe if you just had a normal pump as opposed to an airlift pump. A lot of that is, I guess, you just don't get the same kind of pressure out of it. You don't, like you were saying, you don't get the same sort of gallons per hour. But everything has a place.
The head height, you just don't get quite the same head height. The other nice thing is that especially being down in Jamaica, we have access to a whole bunch of real good bilge pumps, like ship bilge pumps that are all DC based.
Oh, yeah.
So it works real well for hooking up for solar. So I was shocked. I was like, man, like we're gonna have a hard time finding some DC pumps down here. But when I started looking around, I went to the shipyard. I was like, oh man, you guys have like a huge selection of stuff that'll work perfectly with our solar rig here. So this is not going to be anywhere near as much of a headache as I thought it was going to be. So, I mean, it's going to take a little bit of finagling, but, so is everything. Everything in Jamaica is a little bit of finagling.
Right. So, and I was trying to figure out a way, too, because, you brought up the bilge pumps, which is an interesting thing because they're already sort of designed to basically pump whenever water is present and then essentially turn off. In some cases, like a lot of the automatic bilge pumps that you have for boats, they have sensors like that. Are any of the ones that you're seeing down there, have you been able to experiment with those at all? Because I think there might be some interesting things to do there.
We've been running with constant ones that'll just run constantly, or we've been working with live well pumps. They do a lot of live shipping of live reef lobster here, so they have actually some pretty high gallon per hour DC pumps you can acquire for reasonably priced down here for that purpose too. It's the other one, conch too. Sometimes they'll bring in live and then slaughter on the shore, which is another good one too. And they don't do abalone here, but yeah, those are the two that they. There's another one. It's another shellfish here they pull up. I forget what the name of it is, but there's three things here they try to keep alive when they bring it in, and that's what they're for. But yeah, I haven't played with any of those. I don't know. I don't trust anything with a sensor, or a switch, or a timer because it's a failure point to me. I know there's something that's either on or off because then I can hook up a power. What I can do is like I can hook up a power outlet that'll report back to an Ethernet or a web Wi-Fi or something. Then I can see what I want to. Everything we're setting up down here, I want to be able to, like one person or me or whoever, to be able to tell what's going on with all the pumps at a given location. So I can tell based on the power draw if whether or not that pump's running okay or not. The power draw will change. So what I can do is I can plug it into a power outlet that'll report back to a Wi-Fi and have a little control panel, and I can shut the pumps off and on. If that first pump is down, we'll have an inline pump for the second pump, backup pump. All I do is remotely turn on. No one even has to be there. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning. I could do all that remotely, and I could do all that from the United States if I had to, and it would be no problem at all. I just get a little email alert, like a couple clicks, and it'll fix all that. There's too much money invested in this project and some of the stuff we're working on for us to not have that kind of. It just gives us a huge amount of control to be able to immediately do something about it, whether or not there's a human being on the facility. So, whether or not the skill level, the person there doesn't have to do anything. I can stand there and they can just make sure everything runs, and I can control it remotely. Just having a backup person, from far away that can do something about it in an emergency, at least in terms of keeping the fish alive or keeping the plants alive or whatever. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to keep things running to an extent. You know what I mean? Just right. It's better than an insurance policy as far as being able to have control of the grow and any kind of unforeseen circumstances that may happen, which you kind of have to prepare for in Jamaica. The other day, the whole power went off for the whole. I don't know if you guys saw in the news of a month ago. The power went out for the whole island for the first time, or first time in a while anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's definitely a concern. So do you have like plans for putting in like solar backups?
Yeah, we have generators, and we're actually, it's a little bit cheaper down here to, they have these smaller wind generators. They're pretty dope. I'll get some video of them when we get that stuff started setting up. It probably won't be, construction probably won't be till next trip. We were supposed to be able to start last month, but everything got all jacked. But yeah, so you'll get to see some of that. But they have these smaller solar panels, smaller wind panels that work really well. These little wind turbines, and then they have these bigger solar panels. But the solar panel thing's kind of weird because it's a pain in the butt to import panels, and there's like 1 or 2 companies that control everything here. So you're kind of pigeonholed in dealing with them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've wondered. I haven't experimented with them yet, but I'll probably get a couple of there's a couple of just like solar powered aquarium pumps that you can just order off of Amazon. And
yep. Just be mindful if you want to hook up to a you're not something you go hook up to a battery bank. That's the biggest thing.
Well, I think that, I mean, basically otherwise you're running pretty much during the day, right? At nighttime, yep. Just pretty much down for the count. So I mean, and that's probably going to be the case unless you have a relatively large battery set up.
Oh, no. We have the company I used to work for, Aquaponics first, they have a little battery backup that runs for, I think, this on a normal car battery will run for like 2 or 3 days. And if you got a beefier battery, it'll run for even longer than that. But you could always drain the battery 3/4 of the way, throw it back in your car, run it with the alternator on and charge the battery back up and keep your, I mean, in a, your power outs in an ice storm kind of situation,
I actually have I have a battery charger, so I'll just be able to swap them out. So
there you go.
I could just, I wouldn't even need to run on solar at all if I didn't want to. That was one of my concerns was with a solar backup or even primary solar was that, in the wintertime or even just relatively cloudy days, you're not going to get nearly as good a drop. My dad has a solar system for his RV that's basically, really relatively simple, just a charger and a couple of golf cart batteries that are wired together. And it works great. But, unless you've got, pretty good direct sun, if you've got a thin cloud layer, it'll still work pretty well, but you're still only going to have, power for a limited amount of time, like you were saying. So I guess my backup plan for my backup plan would be to charge the battery with the regular battery charger. But obviously, you can't do that if the power is out anyway.
Well, that would be the advantage to run to a battery bank. You could always plug it up to a gas-powered generator and just fire that up and run juice into the bank, you know.
Yeah, the generator sort of. I have a generator. It's sort of the overall backup plan if it really goes south, I guess. But I want to do and do a small test in the outdoor this year of just a small solar pump back there, because I get so much sun back there. Like I'm in a valley, so it's a huge valley here in Southern Oregon. It's called the Rogue Valley. I've never been through it or not, but I mean I get a huge amount of daylight. Like the sun comes up on the horizon, goes down on the horizon. There's not really anything that blocks it at all. So I think that I could probably charge up enough to run 24 with just a run 24/7 on the solar pump with a small pump, obviously, and in a 12-volt battery or 2 golf cart batteries. I haven't really decided which way I want to go on that yet, but I'll probably probably have my daughter help me with that as maybe like a science project, or we'll set up a small one, and just like maybe 2 fish in the tank and just a simple little pump and have it run, see how it goes. Kind of measure it up. It'd be kind of cool. Right now I just have a big extension cord that runs out there to run one pump, so it's kind of silly, but it would be kind of cool to run the whole thing off of solar, but I haven't used it enough to trust it at this point.
Since we're on the topic of greenhouses, I wanted to mention this too. There's a big difference as far as zoning laws go between a hoop house and a greenhouse. And knowing the difference can mean the difference between building out something in your yard and then being told that you have to legally rip it all down, or being allowed to keep it. A hoop house in most places is considered a temporary structure, which is metal hoops with a plastic covering stretched over it. A greenhouse is a hard panel, so plastic or glass panels, or old windows or whatever you want to use if you're recycling. That is considered a permanent structure, and that the permitting is much, much more different. So if you're just getting started with greenhouses and you don't want to invest a ton of money, or you're not 100% sure if it's going to fly with your township or this, that, or the other, always go with a hoop house, because you're going to end up with about half as much headache. And then, you could always change it later on once people are kind of used to it. Than if you just go with the straight greenhouse off the bat, even though they are a little less secure.
Yeah, it all depends on where you live. Definitely check into your local zoning and find out, because unfortunately here we don't have that distinction. Basically any structure that's over 500 square feet has to be permitted, including like engineer plans. That's all. Most of that comes from Jackson County here in Southern Oregon. So there's definitely, it varies, like even just about, I don't know what, like 25, 30 miles north to Josephine County, you don't have to deal with a lot of that, and it's all different. So obviously a lot of people think that Jackson County is going to lose out on some income from all the regulation that they're putting in. But I don't know, it just seems like wherever you're at, just check your city, check your county, and check your state regulations, because all 3 of those can be separate and require different things. Like I have to get a permit from the county to grow outdoors. It's going to cost me like $1,600 altogether. And I don't have to get it till they start flowering though, so I'm good for a few more months still. But yeah, check your regulations. Here we don't have to deal with that, but we do have to have what is it? I think anything over 8-foot fences has to have engineer plans. We have some stupid shit here, so make sure your county does not also have stupid shit, because they will still fine you for stupid shit, and there's not really anything you can do about it. You're muted, Steve.
There we go. Any of you states that are out there looking to get legalized and all that stuff, make sure that you don't have any stupid local ordinance provisions or anything in your law that allows local townships or anything to go all crazy. And there's just a whole county in California that's trying to block all growing for now until they can get, quote unquote, get the growing situation under control. Like, what the fuck is that? They've been growing in California since 1996. Okay, what's the problem? There isn't one. It's completely ridiculous. It's just another way for these prohibitionists to go and pick on people because they have nothing else better to do. These retired, people, a lot of these people are retired. They're on little church groups and local boards and stuff. They have nothing else better to do all day than to harass people that are trying to make an honest living or grow medicine for themselves or other people. It's just completely ridiculous. I'm not saying that everyone falls into those categories, but that happens to be a considerably large percentage of the people that we end up having to deal with that are just simply aren't educated on the topics of cannabis and cannabis regulations and everything else.
Which also, I mean, definitely in terms of like legislation, make sure to watch out for, like you were saying, for local bans and try, like we tried to do it here in Oregon. Obviously, they still, and especially, it's really funny if somebody posted, I don't remember who it was, I saw it on Facebook earlier, one of the Right to Grow groups, they posted a map of Oregon that shows which counties have put in regulations, which counties have put in bans. And basically, if the county is red, there's a ban. If it's yellow, there is a regulation. And if there's none of those things have changed since legalization, the county was still green. And I swear to God, the state was divided in half. It was like all green on this side and all red on this side and like yellow sort of down the middle. And then Portland, a little green bubble up there, obviously. But it was ridiculous. Like that, the whole like western side of Oregon is just like, fuck you. It's all red, like the whole thing. In Jackson County, we're like right in the middle of the state. We're even probably a little bit on the west side, and then all the way down on the California border. And they haven't banned it altogether, but they've definitely put in some heavy regulations. So here we're definitely yellow. Looks like at least for this season, I'm going to be limited to 10 flowering plants at a time, regardless of what I do. And that means, by the way, that I can't grow both me and my wife's medical card here at my residence, which is ridiculous. And
yeah.
Why the county's getting sued. So
there's a regulation I want to see. I want to see if there's one person in a house taking opioids, the other people in the house are automatically blocked from taking any opioid-based painkiller. Let's see that one. If they're gonna, straight up, if they're gonna pass rules like this for cannabis, there's no reason they shouldn't pass something like that for a more dangerous drug.
Right, and so I'm thankful for legalization, but on a personal level, it really sucks for me. Like if you just look at the steps that are involved in growing at this point, before I had to get my card and then I had to stay within my limit. I could even grow for other people, up to 4 other people, or I guess up to 4 total. So myself and 3 others, or me and my wife and 2 others, whatever combination you wanted to have. But essentially I could have up to 24 plants. Right? So before legalization, I could have 24 plants. I could grow them outside. I could grow them inside. My neighbors could complain about the smell all they wanted to. But because I had a card and I was growing for legal purposes, there was nothing they could do. I had to stay within limits, which I did. But that was essentially the steps to getting there. Now I have to file for a non-conforming use permit so that I can grow outdoors. That will cost, I think, $160 just to do the application. If my application gets approved, then I have to pay another $1,500 to get the permit issued. which will still only allow me to grow up to what the county's new regulation is, which is maximum of 10 plants in anywhere that's considered a residential area. I am on a quarter-acre lot here. I have a huge backyard that butts up against wildlife refuge, so there's literally nobody around. I have 2 neighbors, one on each side, and that's basically it. And so it's kind of ridiculous that I'm limited to that when I clearly have room for a lot more. And I think that it's perfectly reasonable that I would want to grow 12 plants, which would be 6 for me and 6 for my wife. And then, you know, what if I wanted to grow for my dad, or my buddy gets cancer, or somebody else? You know, like last year I had my buddy that needed a place because he got kicked off of his spot by a landlord that was trying to extort him, basically. So he threw together an outdoor out here and killed it. But I wouldn't even be able to do that for him now, even though I have everything else available to me in order to make it work. If I wanted to help somebody out, I can't even do it because I can't even grow the medicine for me and my wife outdoors. Indoors, doesn't matter. 10 plants is the maximum for Jackson County right now, if you're in anything that's considered residential. Even so, my zoning here is considered urban residential. There's also what do they call it, rural residential, I think. So there's a bunch of different zoning shit that plays into it, and it's all done by zoning. So rural residential can have, I think, 18 plants or something like that. So I don't know. And you can have 4 recreational plants per address. So that's what I can do right now. I can have one card and 4 recreational, and then I have to keep them separate. They have to be in a separate area. Like, these are the medical plants and these are the recreational plants, which is stupid. I just don't understand any of it. Like,
how does that make sense now? So these are these are the plants that are for medicine, and these are the plants that are for fun. Like, how? Okay.
You can't even have them in the same area. Like you can't even have them under the same grow light. Like, how stupid is that? Like, why is that even a thing? What is that accomplishing other than what? Like, just adding more regulation. I just don't fucking get it at all. Like, what problem does that solve? You know what I mean?
I can't think of anything that makes sense for it all. So we were talking about, we started all that off of pest control options.
Oh yeah.
What do you like for fungal prevention? And then I'll cover over mine.
Well, I really like just aerated compost tea. I find is, you know, really effective for a lot of things. I try to keep that as sort of like my base, unless I, you know, I'm dealing with a specific issue. I want to get more into like the EM1 aerated teas, like adding some into that, and, you know, basically just getting a more healthy microbe profile to be able to prevent most of that stuff. So I'm basically going for diversity. You know, like, obviously I have a healthy amount of diversity in my own worm bin, but on top of that, I have some the MPK microbes that I got from the store for your what we can use segment, which I haven't got anything else besides that since then, but I did get that one. So I'll mix a little bit of that in and try to go with just a healthy microbe spray, and try to keep it to stuff that I can make, stuff that I can grow. I have I've been using aloe. I've got I think we lost Steve again. It's probably reconnecting. But aloe is a great thing that you can add into different mixes, or just add it by itself. You can make a dip for it. Find it works really well for cloning. Hey, you're back. Maybe. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Good. Sorry about that.
that's all right. So I was just saying, aloe is another one that I've been adding a lot, especially for root development, stuff like that. Obviously, people use it a lot in cloning. Um, so I planted some here. I like stuff that I can grow and use and extract. I do a lot of the garlic extract, the peppermint extract. Probably garlic is like my go-to for any sort of like breakout that I can actively see. If I'm not in flower, obviously, if I'm in flower, I don't use any sort of oil that could absorb into the buds. So I would say after like, I mean, it's kind of sort of hard to say because you have different strains. Oh, lost Steve's video. You still there? Are you back? Now you have no sound.
How about now? Okay.
There you go. Now I can hear you. All right. Looks like you're muted
Yeah, the
again.
microphone's just going to be a little lower quality.
All right.
Am I muted again? Can you
No,
hear
you're
me?
good. I think you're just lagging.
Okay.
So anyway, aloe is another one of my go-tos because I can grow it. And, you know, you can pretty much, use it in a lot of different things. People use it in cloners a lot. My buddy who does a lot of clones, he swears by adding it to. He just uses an easy cloner with water and aloe, and that's basically it. And has really good success with that. So I think on my shelf right now, I think I have lavender oil, I have lemongrass oil, I have peppermint. I grow a lot of peppermint, spearmint. Uh, there's a guy here that shows up at the farmer's market. He's always got like random different kinds of mint, like orange mint, all kinds of different things. So I usually grab a couple of those. So I have 4 or 5 different kinds of mint that we make homemade soap out of it. It's great to just cut fresh and like throw in a bath. Pretty nice. But I definitely add that. Pretty much any mix of oil, I do like probably like 5 milliliters of oil per gallon, unless I'm like a heavy spider mite outbreak or something like that. I'll definitely go a little heavier on the oil. But I go basically about 5 milliliters of oil, a pretty healthy amount of organic soap, and water is kind of like my base spray. I usually do that about, I would say, once a week, unless I have some like major thing that I'm battling. If I'm in flower, I try to go with beneficial insects the most I can. If it's like a spider mite outbreak, if it's like powdery mildew, I did the H2O2 spray, but you're creating such a huge vacuum in your microbial profile that it can be really easy for a PM to continue to spread after that if you don't keep up on spraying. So it works great. It doesn't burn your plants. It doesn't really affect them at all. I didn't even have any like pistol burn. I used regular H2O2 that you would buy at the drugstore. And I think it was 1 to 10, one parts to 10 with H2O. That worked really well as long as I continued to spray it, and really kept it down and out. If I even missed a day though, I would start seeing little spots of it start to pop up. And 2 days would just be a significant amount of it that would have to be cut out, and then you respray. So it's kind of a thing that you, if you're going to go with H2O2, just understand that you're going to have to do it pretty much every night until you harvest, or else it's going to pop back up because the spores are just everywhere. There's so many of them, and by killing off with H2O2, you're killing off even the beneficial microbes that keep it from taking root. basically creates a clean slate for it to take root on. So it works, but it has its downsides. But it doesn't burn anything. It doesn't absorb anything. At the end, you're pretty much, at least you have a clean product, which is obviously important. In flower, I'll use, like for spider mites, I'll definitely use predator mites. Ladybugs, big proponent of ladybugs, especially for like aphids or whiteflies or gnats or regular flies. They're awesome. They're cheap. You can get like 1,500 of them for like $10.
Another good one for stuff that you would attack with ladybugs is 6-spotted thrips. Normally you associate thrips with being a bad insect, but 6-spotted thrips are actually just as vicious as a predator as ladybugs or any of your other meaner bugs that would be out there.
Yeah, there's another one too. I was just at the bug store here. We have one here locally that does, which is really awesome. They do ladybugs, they do predator mites. They have 3 different kinds of, they call triple threat predator mites, which is, they sort of do like this custom mix of predator mites for our area that basically covers all the different species that live around here. That's pretty cool. And they give you all the important thing with predator mites is that you have to maintain the temperature and humidity. Your humidity goes up, which in order for them to stick around and maintain, they basically won't hang around an area that has too low a humidity or too high, but they're relatively, more tolerant of high humidity than they are low, from what this guy was telling me. So you do run more of a risk of getting PM. Like, you really have to have that dialed in to where if you want to not get PM, or at least decrease your chances of getting PM, but keep your predator mites around, you really need to keep it at like that 45 to 50% humidity, or else they're just not going to stick around very long and the spider mites will take back over. So it can be a little bit of a balancing act to make predator mites work, and you have to have a lot of them. It's kind of like, I call it bug wars. That's kind of the way that I think about it is, you have to have, have an infantry out there. So I actually release predator mites and ladybugs at the same time. Yes, I know they're going to eat, the ladybugs are going to eat the predator mites. I actually have some video of it. So if anybody tells you that they won't eat predator mites, I have a video that shows them doing it, which was really cool. But I know they're going to eat some of them, but I pretty much take the good with the bad. The ladybugs seem to do a good job of keeping them from spreading. And then I think the predator mites just come in and kind of clean house. So pretty much my standard release is like 1,500 ladybugs and somewhere around 500 to 1,000 predator mites, depending on what. And that's for just my garage. So that's like what, of 4x8 grow space, basically, when you get down to it. But they are extremely effective. And I guess probably the biggest issue with like ladybugs when you release that many of them in a small place is that they'll come through and wipe everything out, which is great. But when they run out of food, they'll just start dying off. So might have some ladybugs to clean up. Make sure they get in the worm bin or something. What about you? You use insects much?
Yeah, it depends on what you're fighting. There's a little aphid wasp that works pretty well. My favorite thing for whiteflies is Encarsia formosa. You just get a couple of those, you release them in mass, and they'll take over. The wasps will wipe out a whole greenhouse worth of whiteflies in a good week or two once they get rip roaring. It takes them a good couple of weeks to get there, but once they hit kind of saturation point, you'll notice all of a sudden they're just gone. Once in a while, they just start to sneak in the greenhouse. Back in Colorado, we'd have to treat them before they get out of hand. And not so much that they attack cannabis, but they'll get on there and poop on it and all that stuff.
Right, we talked about some, planting different things that attract bugs too, as like an
mint. Mint
stuff.
is like their favorite thing for them. Spider mites too. Spider mites love mint.
Right.
It's a good way to pull them off your other plants. They prefer the softer tissue and all that. It's easier for them to digest.
And you'll notice the damage on them also. You know, like you'll be able to see it, and when they start attacking them, and it's a great indicator. And being able to see it before they hit the cannabis is, you know, it's a big benefit. And then they're, you know, as long as they're not flowering, which even if they do go into flower, you can't just pull the tops off. But they're pretty much just going to consume nitrogen out of your system anyway. So they're a great companion plant to have. And I did that even my outdoor last year. I had mint growing basically for the most part in every bed I had at least one mint plant in it. Just
make sure you put it in a pot, because that stuff will take over a grow bed if you let it go. If you
know, I've gotten to the point where I know that it's such a tough plant that I just like, I'm so rough with it now. Like I'll just.
You can rip it in half once a week, and you won't even know it.
Yeah, I'll go out there and just pull it up, and I'll look for those runners and just every one of them, like, so that I can keep it from spreading out. And yeah, I know it's not. I mean, like, I've cut chunks off of it like that. I've had those runners that I cut off. I throw them in the worm bin. They root in the worm bin. They'll start growing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, you almost can't kill it. It's that ridiculous. In my outdoor last year, I had one of them that just like, it like probably had 12-foot long roots that grew all the way down, like through this, all the way down and through the siphon, and like started hanging out the bottom of the siphon. It probably had to go through at least 6 feet of pipe just to be able to get all the way through and out the bottom. And when I pulled it out afterwards and pulled it all out and stretched it all out, it was probably close to 12 feet long. Like, that just kept growing through the pipe. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we had a in the lab over where I used to work, we had a tomato plant grow the roots straight up a pipe, like a 6-foot pipe, down over and into this manifold. And it was like, they grew against the water flow. I don't even know how many feet, like 12, 14 feet to get to where they were. I couldn't believe it. It grew down a pipe against the, high flow 1-inch water pipe. It's pretty nuts. It's crazy tomato roots.
Yeah.
But for fungal, I really like introducing there's the I forget what there's another bacteria aside from Bacillus subtilis. It's called Calora something or other. I forget what the species name is, but you can find them available as like a common beneficial microbe. They use them for all kinds of livestock stuff as well, for fixing their guts and stuff, their digestive tract, and it's really, really, really good. Good thing. You can load it up, totally fish safe. The cheapest way to find it is for chicken probiotic. You get the little packets of the chicken probiotic. You can get they come like 3 for $1 at the farm store or Tractor Supply or any of those types of places. Especially this time of year, you can find them pretty easy. And that's a great thing you can dump in that really, really helps annihilate them in the root zone. The other one that something that I didn't hear you mention, or wasn't sure if I did, is beneficial nematodes. I know a lot of people associate nematodes with being kind of a bad thing, but beneficial nematodes are really, really, really good to have. If you have a root mite problem, you can find root russet mites, root aphids. That is your best companion for that, because they love to get into that more liquidy, watery layer, and the nematodes get in and they infect the eggs, and then they infect the parents, and that's really the only way to get them out of the media bed. And once they get established, that I've found so far. The only other way aside from that is to seal it up with like garlic juice or flash crash it with high CO2 amounts, where you flood it and then inject a ton of CO2 to flash crash the pH, which works really well, but it's more pain in the butt than just adding a bunch of, going and buying 2 or 3 bags of beneficial nematodes per, 1 bag of per 4x4 foot of section if you have a bad mite infection, or fungus gnats. Fungus gnats are another one. Thrips are another one that'll all breed in the surface layer of your media or your soil. If you're doing dual root zone, sometimes they'll breed in the soil. Thrips especially will lay their eggs down in the soil layer. And if you have any of those, or root mites, root aphids, all those, the beneficial nematodes work really well. The other thing that you can use beneficial nematodes for is if you happen to have like fleas or something like that on your cats and dogs, they actually have another species you can buy at most Home Depot. You can spread out in the lawn, and it kills the flea eggs and the adult fleas that are in the yard. And they're, they target a pretty small group of target stuff, so you don't have to worry about them completely annihilating all your beneficial insects in the yard. They'll wipe out some of them, but any kind of control like that will, but it's nowhere near as bad as some of the chemical stuff you could use.
Right. Yeah, nematodes for sure. And there's some of them I was watching about beneficial nematodes. Like some of them that you can basically just just appear if you like overfeed your fish. You can see them pop up in the fish tank. I don't know if you've ever had any experience with that, but there was oh yeah, I don't remember who it was now. One of the channels I was watching, like just basically had them appear in his tank, and at least he claimed it was from overfeeding, and that they essentially just appeared there.
So those little white ones you see, they're real common. You'll see them in aquariums. The other place you see them a lot is in terrariums or vivariums. Are little white guys, and they look almost like a little slug or something like that. And what they're called, they're a type of flatworm, and they're perfectly harmless. They're a little algae eater. They just eat detritus and bacteria, and they'll keep your system clean. And they're called planaria. And a lot of people freak out thinking they have some kind of crazy parasite or something nasty in the system. They're perfectly fine. They're a little cleaning crew. That I used to love having them in my dart frog tank, because sometimes they crawl up right on the edge of the water. My dart frogs would eat them, especially when some of the ones get a little bit larger. They end up almost the same size as a fruit fly, and real good dart frog food. So if you have dart frogs or real tiny amphibians or salamanders and stuff, they're a great food for them. So depending on what else you're keeping as a hobby, it can be actually a great little source. But if you have they're pretty sensitive to nutrient levels and all that, because they're a flatworm, so they can't tolerate pollution or toxic environments much. So they actually are a sign of you don't have much chemicals or heavy metals or anything particularly nasty in your water. It might be a little stagnant, but depending on where you have them. But it doesn't necessarily, it's a good sign as far as you don't have anything too nasty in your water.
I wish I remember which video it was now. It was on somebody's channel, and they were concerned because didn't know what they were, obviously. And I think he called them nematodes, but he was probably just misinformed, which is fine. And so I think that he was investigating it because of that same initial concern that I think anybody would have, that worms, especially a lot of them. He had a considerable number of them, but he was feeding his fish too much and cut back, which was probably true if he had significant number of them. You could definitely see that happening. But the beneficial nematodes, you can order those, or you get them from a number of different places where they're not that expensive either. I don't remember how much they are, but I think I ordered some about a year ago.
I think they're like $36 here or not here, but in Colorado, they're about $36 to $40 for a bag of them, and that'll treat like a 4x4, 4x6 bed, But it'll last, once they're established, you only need to do that maybe once every year or two, and they'll just annihilate anything that they'll breed out in your system, and they'll survive real well. And any insect that's getting in and trying to breed in the surface of your media is just going to get annihilated. The eggs are going to get penetrated and eaten from the inside by these little worms. And they're totally harmless to humans, the beneficial ones that they sell. So you don't have to worry about them getting into you or anything creepy like that. They're good guys.
Yeah, they're not like tapeworms or any bullshit like that, for sure. And I'm pretty sure it's probably, I know it was before I set up the outdoor last year. I don't remember exactly when it was that I ordered them, but they're pretty much just like the red worms. They spread out and survive. The red worms survived forever. I had beds that like a thing of media that just sat on the front porch for probably, I don't even know, like it was just old media from the system that I wasn't using, probably like 4 months or so. And when poured them in. And one of the setups I did, I think the front porch setup that I did recently, where I used the liner and built a bed into it. And when I poured the media out of there, like literally hadn't put anything in it, no water, no nothing, hadn't gotten anything, and there were still plenty of worms in there alive and well, just living on fish poop. Probably dehydrated.
The other worm that a lot of people don't hear much about for use in aquaponics, especially if you're running media beds or you're having some sludge issues or issues with stuff collecting, is there's a worm you can get in a lot of aquarium stores called a black worm, or they also call them, what's the other one? Bloodworm. They'll call them bloodworms or blackworms. Blackworms will survive a little bit more than the bloodworms, but you can introduce those to your aquaponics system, and they are really, really, really good for getting in and breaking down. If you have a media bed that's getting slowly clogged, maybe an old tomato plant or old cucumber plant or something that's got the bed kind of locked up a little bit, or it's a little bit sludgy, maybe you're overfeeding a little bit, and you're like, oh crap, I realized I got too much fish food in the bed. They're a great one to get in there and dig down through that and break that all up in a couple of weeks. They'll get that all broken down, and the nice thing is they'll breed out, and if you have younger tilapia or baby fish, they are a great food. Your fish will grow ridiculously fast. When I used to breed betas, that was one of the main foods that I would use, and I mean I could get a fish to adult size in 3-6 months with the betas, feeding them different sized between microworms and bloodworms and blackworms. So they're a real good food for your baby fish, and real great way to break down those sludgier areas of your system that a lot of people don't often use, but it's readily available in a lot of better mom and pop aquarium stores. You can get it.
Yeah, and also too, like one of the like the red worms or any of those, I keep a worm bin separate. Obviously, they're really easy to maintain in terms of like keeping them alive and stuff, and they make great food for chickens too. We just recently got some baby chickens that I built a chicken coop and stuff outside, and kids want to keep chickens and do all that stuff, which is fun. But my wife is allergic to eggs, so that definitely is kind of a bummer for her. But we're gonna raise some chickens out there, and that's one of my son's favorite things to do. Is he goes through the worm bin and picks out all the big juicy worms and goes and feeds them. He likes to feed the catfish. He likes to feed the chickens. So it's a great thing for kids to do, and it's a great feed for the animals too. It's relatively easy to do, and there's so many of them, especially since I've started using it, the bokashi bucket in the house and then transferring it out to the worm bin, and that particular method and adding the bokashi right to the worm bin itself to the other beneficial microbes, all the different samples I think I've added in to my worm bin at this point are definitely got a pretty healthy microbial profile. I put mammoth in there, I put the NPK nutrients in there, and there's definitely a lot of overlap. Like if you look at NPK and I can't remember, there's one of the other beneficial microbe packs that I got. A lot of the places will just send you samples. I'm sure you've gotten plenty of them. And so that's kind of been where I put all of them so far, is just in the worm bin. Some of them I've put directly in to teas before I put them in the system and just kind of experiment with that. But yeah, I think that like since I've started doing that, my worm increase has been crazy. There's just so many of it in there that it's just such an excess that it's not even a big deal to pick out like a whole cup full of worms and go feed them. So been really into doing that.
Well, that's good. I had a crop for the week this week, which will be the black crims. Black crim tomatoes are one of my favorite. They're really cool, especially if you have kids. The tomatoes red goes from green, then it turns red, then it turns black. And if you have like a part of it that's shaded, the leaf shades it and keeps it at a direct light, or the little green part of the top of the tomato, when you peel it off, it is red underneath. Like anywhere that shades it doesn't turn black. They're an extremely sweet tomato. They're a newer variety. They're not. You can get them in a. They're not GMO or anything like that. They're just a I don't know, hybrid variety, and they're really, really, really good. And they're just different. They taste really good, and something kind of neat.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah, they're called black crim tomatoes.
Awesome. My daughter has a competition going on with her school right now where they handed out little cabbage starter plants.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, so 2 years ago we did that for one of the kids that I was working with last summer, I think it was. If you guys go to the Aquaponic Chronic on Reddit, and you go down to the bottom, there it says greenhouse update. It says posted by Ponics. You can actually see I posted a picture of it. We grew one of those cabbages, and it was about 7 feet across, and there's a little tiny ammonia test bottle from an API kit on top, just to show you scale. And the thing is just like this big on top of this enormous cabbage. We ended up pulling the plastic up the one side of the greenhouse to get it out of the greenhouse because it wouldn't fit through the doorway. Even when we tried turning it sideways. So we ended up putting it on a wheelbarrow and taking the side off the greenhouse to get it to school. But that was really, really fun.
That's awesome. We had, I think it's 120 or maybe 150 gallon smart pot that we had outside. And now that I can't have as many plants as I could have before, we're going to be able to use it anyway. Like all the plants, plants that I'm going to put in the beds are all I want to put in soil. So wasn't going to do anything with it. So I have one cabbage planted in I think it's a 150 gallon smart pot. It's just
super soil.
Of super soil. So it's
we did ours in a giant, I think it was an 80-gallon dual root zone pot, like the same one we were using for the fruit trees, which was like half of a 50, or no, it was like basically most of a 55-gallon drum, or basically the same as that, like I think it was close, it was a 30-gallon trash can that we put holes in the bottom or something like that. And then the whole thing was set up dual root zone. We had it on a drip feed where it was getting the same nutrients as all the cannabis plants, and that thing just took off.
Yeah, it's already like tripled in size in like 2 weeks. I mean, it's going.
The fish water just makes them grow nuts.
Right, and then like once a week or so, we just do regular water most of the time, but about once a week or so, I have to go out and add a nice tea to it. And
watch the slugs. We had a little bit of slug attack with ours.
Yeah, we'll probably get we get a lot of cats around here, especially on the cabbage for whatever reason. They really like it, and so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But really, it's
pepper plants around it.
Yeah, it's just for the school challenge thing. I think they have goals you can meet. I think the top one is if you get it up to like 100 pounds or something like that, and it's like you get some sort of big reward or something. But anyway, we got the starter plant, was all excited about it. We were trying to figure out where we want to put it, and it was like, well, I'm not going to use that. And so
put some chicken wire around it. How can we LST a cabbage?
Yeah, there you go. How's that going to work? Just like mash it down?
Actually, yeah, we'll have to see if we can't send you that growth stuff that we're working on, the organic growth. We have this organic growth booster that one of the companies I'm working with has got that we'll put some pretty insane things, and I can't talk about anything beyond that. I got a sample batch of this new product that's organic that's going to be coming out later in the year, and it's the craziest fertilizer I've ever seen, and it's nothing not natural in it. It's all just made of all natural organic ingredients, and it just does crazy things that I've never seen a synthetic, better yet an organic based nutrient do. So I'll have some before and after results without being able to talk about it. And some of that, if they'll let me post that and all that stuff. So
that's cool. I'm going to shoot. My daughter really wants to do update videos on my YouTube channel. So
there you go.
The first one pretty soon, and get that started probably like once a week or so.
Maybe you can make a channel called like AP Veg.
AP Veggies. AP Veggies.
AP Veggies. Yeah.
Like that. So it'll be exciting to see how it turns out. She's excited about it, which is cool. Both my kids actually probably like more so than just like the traditional farming. You know, aquaponics is sort of like I don't know, like just giving them a different level of understanding about it, I guess, or not necessarily understanding, but I think it just gives them a different attitude towards it. It's more fun. You know, they get to play with the fish and watch the fish and feed the fish, and like catching the fish is like the ultimate thing for my son. Like he loves to get to know. Like anytime we need to transplant fish to do something, he's just like, let me do it, let me do it, let me do it. And so, you know, and all that stuff too, like, you know, he's just learning stuff intrinsically also, you know, like you know, how we make the worm tea and what they eat, and just ask those questions sort of as they come up, as opposed to like in a book or at school or whatever else. Now, like I said, I got to give their school a lot of credit because they do have a great gardening program, which none of the other schools in our district have, but they go to a great school where they supply all of their own fruits and vegetables, or not fruits, all their own greens and vegetables, like carrots and all that kind of stuff, for all their school lunches. They grow enough to not only do theirs, but they're going to start providing them for some of the other schools in the district because they're producing so much. And they do a lot of composting and a lot of you know, organic growing methods that are definitely like way more than head and shoulders above any other district that I've seen around here. So I definitely got to give them props for that. But I definitely think that aquaponics is just one of those things that gets the attention of kids and gets them asking more questions, and you have more things to be interested in. And now that he's gotten interested in it, everything is interesting about it. Now that he has that attitude about it, he wants to go out and plant stuff in the back and in the soil and dig holes and, you know, pull out weeds, and like he has a different level of interest than before we started doing aquaponics. So it's kind of cool to see that develop.
Learning biology, he's learning math, he's learning, you know, all these different skills, and he's not even thinking about it or thinking of it in that context, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's the other fun thing, especially if you have kids that are struggling to learn math or struggling to read or struggling to whatever. You can give them a short little thing to read that's about, you know, there's something they're really interested in really working, and maybe use that as an opportunity where they're not thinking about it or not worried or they're not intimidated about looking silly for not saying it right or whatever. You know, that's a great way to bridge gaps with kids that are having a little bit of struggling with one of those areas. You know, they don't feel in the same mental context.
Right, and they can do stuff too. You know, like that's, I think, another important aspect to it too. Like my son has a hard time sitting still listening to anybody talk about anything. I mean, he's 5, so it's not like that's you know, that's an abnormal thing. But when you give them something that they can, like he likes to plant seeds, for instance. So in aquaponics, that's a piece of cake, right? You take some, drop them in. Especially if you just have like lettuce or tomatoes or something like that, you know, every seed doesn't germinate. It's not necessarily a big deal. And even still, I think I probably have very few seeds that don't germinate. Like I've even put like 2 or 3 in a place and I get 2 or 3 back. And so, you know, I've always had really good success with this germinating right in the media. But it's just such a great thing for them to be able to like, just let them throw in a handful, you know, like if only 5 of them grow, it's not like the kid counted how many seeds went in there and knows how many come out, you know. So I just think that it's a great way to be able to, they don't have to come out and get the seeds wet all the time, or, you know, check a paper towel in a bag. I mean, all those things are cool to be able to teach them how to do. But it's nice to be able for him to be able to just throw some seeds in and say he planted some carrots, and then he comes back, you know, the next day and says, oh, look, my carrots are growing. And to him, he feels like he's taking care of it. But it's slightly easier for the younger kids that, you know, maybe aren't going to necessarily to remember to keep their seeds wet all the time until they germinate and then transplant them. And then there's a lot of different steps, a lot of information to digest at each place for a young guy. So it's definitely helped him sort of like take smaller steps at a younger age, which I think is awesome. You're muted.
Sorry, absolutely. Trying to make sure to this. I had to switch mics when I got disconnected, and I'm trying to not have any background noise as much as possible, so I apologize. Oh shoot, my tabs got switched around. Okay. I had another question. So somebody asked me, or there was a question on Reddit, and then the guy was posting around a couple of Facebook things, I think, too, about what NPK you're looking for an aquaponic product. And, you know, you do have to evaluate it on an individual nutrient basis to make sure you're not adding anything like yucca or neem or some of the other stuff that can be bad for fish. But what you're generally looking for is something that is 0, 3.5 or 0, and then it has a number for P and K. You make sure that your K isn't super, super crazy. You kind of give your fish heart attacks if you push it too hard. But you basically want something with 1 or very, very little nitrogen, so that you don't, your fish are there for the nitrogen. That's what the nitrates are. So you want to make sure you're not, double dosing something that's already there and then accidentally killing your fish. Aside from salt buildup or some of the other things that can happen. But in general, that's what you're looking for. You can use things like the Botanicare. Some of the Botanicare products work okay. If you want to use them, I know they have like a soil, I think it's a soil pro. That's like a 1.5 something. That's really good. I used to use a lot. And they work pretty well. The other questions I had were MaxiCrop. There's a question about MaxiCrop lately. MaxiCrop is totally fine to use. It's sold at pretty much every garden center in the United States and a whole bunch everywhere else. It's also sold under other names, I think in Europe and Australia. In Australia, it's sold as their real equivalent is Sea Sol, and then I know there's one over in Europe, they call it something else. But those are all safe to use. They're just mostly a potassium booster and some micronutrients. They're all fine and dandy. Pretty hard to overdose. Just remember, it can stain the water, make it kind of hard to read your iron test or your nitrate test or your pH test. So just know that you want to check all that before you dose. You said you had something to ask about what to dose. I got 2 other things too.
I haven't got any questions about dosing recently. I mean, we had the ones that we covered last week. The only other, this is the latest sample that I got in though. This is from T-Lab, which is a place in Eureka, California, I think. Down on the coast there somewhere. Either Humboldt or Mendo. I think they're in Eureka. Yeah, Arcata, right here. So, and this is basically just another microbial profile. It's similar to your modern microbes or any of those other ones, and so it basically is not going to increase nutrient levels, but it's going to help you make your existing nutrients available to the plants. So for the most part, I'll probably mix these in for just added, like I was saying, added microbial profile. And so you can check those guys out at T-Lab. And obviously, this is something that you can use in your system for the most part. There's not really any nutrients, so that's not really going to be any sort of issue. And it looks like it's specifically made to target silica. So there you go.
Perfect. Perfect.
Mitigating bacteria and fungi, fighting root rot.
So it's specifically for upping your silica uptake? That's really awesome.
It's specifically for, where'd it go? Yeah, essentially to break down silica. Stimulate the systemic acquired resistance and produce natural growth hormones.
Cool. What's the name of that?
This is called Soil Life Microbial Inoculant, made by T-Lab, yes. And it contains Bacillus mycodes. I don't know if you can read that.
Not quite. We'll have to throw a link up in the thing.
Yeah, I'll throw a link up. Let's see. I had a piece of paper on it too that it came with.
No worries, we'll paste that into the comment or the description. I gotta go back and fix some of the old video descriptions too. I've been meaning to do that. I've just been kind of swamped down here lately.
I haven't even uploaded. I don't even think I uploaded last.
I need to get I'm trying to get all of our stuff up onto iTunes too, but that's been a nightmare because it's like, rawr, your IP address is in Jamaica, and how do we know you're you? And da, 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 da. So that's not going to happen. So I get back to the States. So I know there's one or two people that keep asking me to put them up on iTunes. That will happen. I apologize.
I don't know if you can read any of that or not. But they sent this little list of different things that's included with it. Endomycorrhizal fungi, bacteria, and trichoderma.
Okay. Sounds like it'd be good for a either a lab or a tea.
Mm-hmm. So
or direct dosing.
glomus intradices for phosphorus uptake.
Oh, so it was just that one that was for silica. It's not the whole thing that's designed for that?
It looks like there's a number of them.
Oh, okay.
So,
misunderstood.
Bacillus mysotius looks like the primary one is, and that's
Primary
the
ingredient.
for breaking down silica, potassium, and micronutrients. Bacillus megaterium, phosphorus. I'm sorry, I'm slaughtering all of these pronunciations. But yeah, nitrogen fixation, plant growth, hormone production, pathogen resistance, disease control, more nitrogen, more silica fixation. So it's a lot of the same ideas that you have. Like I know Mammoth P is all about, or at least primarily about phosphorus utilization, and modern microbes really focuses on nitrogen and what's the other one? Nitrogen and potassium, I think. So anyway, they all seem to basically be targeting the same types of things, which is, you know, basically just making your nutrients available with different microbes, beneficial microbes. So again, I got this sample from T-Lab, and he was offering them in the PFA group. I just sent him an email, and he sent it out. So big shout out to him. And pretty much any of his stuff, I went to his website. So pretty much anything that you find from T-Lab, this happens to be the Soil Life microbial inoculant, and he has a couple of other inoculants on there. Pretty much any of that stuff is going to be usable in an aquaponic system. It's all just microbes. There's really not anything that's like that you're gonna dose your system with that's gonna like increase nutrient levels at all. Like you were talking about with maxi crop, obviously you put too much in, that's gonna affect your fish in a negative way at some point. But this stuff here, there's not. I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to pose any sort of major issue. And a lot of them will continue to live on, especially if you're doing dual root zone. You'll have the soil layer to be able to maintain a lot of that microbial life for an extended period of time.
So the other two things, there's Boogie Brew, which John Resnick's been asking me for, or John Rez, or yeah, he's okay. I just want to make sure I didn't accidentally say his name, that he didn't post on it. Yeah, on YouTube, John Resnick's been asking me for a couple of weeks. I forgot to do it a couple episodes ago, and I apologize. So we're we looked it up. I looked it up the other day. Everything's good in there. Just be mindful. It looks like it would end up being a little bit acidic, so make sure that if you're dosing it, your pH isn't a huge difference from it. Or make sure that you're putting it in the far end of the fish tank so that it's time to dissolve and not alter your pH overly much. But that was the only concern I really saw with that. I didn't see anything in there that looked like too much of a concern. It didn't have any yucca or anything like that. That can be a real easy killer. Too much zinc sulfate sometimes can be another one. And then I had one other one. 1 second. I accidentally switched tabs again. The other one was Phos Boost. Somebody asked me if Phos Boost is usable. Phos Boost is a phosphorus and calcium additive. It's phosphorus, calcium, and iron basically, and it's actually one of my more favorite phosphorus boosters because it's fossilized seabird guano. And the nice thing about seabird guano is that it has a really good phosphorus to calcium ratio, which is important for maintaining the balance of those. You want a 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 ratio with your calcium and phosphorus. So it would be a 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 phosphorus to calcium. I'm sorry. In order to have real good growth, and that's one of the nice things about it is it has a pretty good. It's basically what it is when it dissolves. So it works out really well, and adds some iron to your system too, which is you kind of do all three with an organic-based nutrient. You don't really get that option to do, 3 essential nutrients like that often unless aquaponics safe, as long as you're not going totally nuts with it.
Right. And it also depends, like we talked about on last week's episode, it depends on where you start out too. If you start out with a lot of calcium in your water, that might not be, like for me, I have a lot of calcium in mine, I know, because I have the testing from when we got the well put in. And I can physically see it build up on every pipe in my house. But other than that, I know that I start out with a large amount of calcium in my system already, so I don't really want to put any into it unless I feel like I have an issue with it, which in like 4 years now of running aquaponic systems, I have yet to dose anything with calcium in it, nor have I needed to. Iron, definitely, for sure. But those are probably the two that I focus on more than anything, are probably iron and potassium. Those are probably the ones that I find having to dose most of the time. And, or I guess not necessarily dose, but those are the deficiencies that I see pop up first if I don't supplement. So that's definitely what so I've basically avoided anything that has to do with nitrogen or calcium, simply because I get nitrogen from the system, I get calcium from my water. So wherever you start out, just understand what you're putting in on top of that, or test it. I mean, that's obviously the other way to go about it too, is like, so understand what levels are safe and what ones aren't, and, don't go above that. But if you're starting out with a lot of calcium and then you dose evenly with calcium and phosphorus, then you're just going to keep your levels at different levels as opposed to getting them within an ideal range. I think we lost Steve again. So we have a couple of people watching. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Hopefully Steve will reconnect here soon. Maybe we lost them all together. Oh, he's back.
All right. Sorry about that.
Hey, there you are.
It actually was a Chrome crash. It wasn't anything else with that. So I don't really know what happened there.
Well, welcome back.
But yeah, sorry about that. Let me pull up my spreadsheet again. Okay, where were we?
We were talking about stuff that was safe to use. You're talking about dosing like calcium and phosphorus and sort of what the break nutrients, and trying to keep calcium and phosphorus on a relatively even scale. That if, I think you were talking about last week that when they get too far out of whack, it can cause lockout issues. And together, if you've got a lot more calcium than phosphorus, or a lot more phosphorus than calcium, either way, can be an issue. So that's what we were talking about, and that I think one of the questions you had asked about one of them, it had both. It had both calcium and phosphorus in it. So knowing where you start out is important, so that you can dose from there. So if you start out at like a, let's say your system is, producing some amount of nitrogen. So let's say you're at like, 5.5, for instance. If you're starting out on an even keel, then that based on what you consume, you can kind of dose on an even keel, right? So you're pretty much even, and using those products that dose evenly can be an advantage. But if you're like me, or you're starting out with different levels because you're not using city water, then understanding how to get those back to even. I mean, it's really just balancing everything out. So I think it's important to note on any of this stuff that we say is safe to use. It's all safe to use up until a particular point, right? Like if you're adding nutrients into your system, regardless of how they get there, other than if you're using like, maybe some sort of hydroponic nutrients that have salts build up in them, or different things like that, or different concerns like that. But pretty much for the most part, whether you're adding maxi crop or you're just adding bulk sea kelp tea, or whatever it is that you're doing to get your what is that, potassium or phosphorus? I forget. It's potassium, right? What's the last one? K is potassium, right? You're muted, by the way.
K is potassium, P is phosphorus.
Potassium, right? That's what I was thinking. So, so I know that's the primary one I need to go in order to get me back to balanced. So when you're using those ones that are like, 5.5, just know that you're dosing across the board. And that's really going to bring all your levels up. If you need to adjust something, you're not going to be able to adjust your level in your system if you're dosing everything evenly with a product like that mixes more things together, which is great. There's nothing wrong with it. You just have to understand where you're at and what you're trying to get to. So I think we covered in like maybe like the second or third podcast kind of what fish safe levels were of all of your main nutrients that you would add. So if anybody wants to check on that stuff.
I know we covered some of them. I don't remember if we did all of them or not. I know I wanted to do each nutrient kind of like in its own episode and try and cover a little more in depth and all that stuff. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think in the beginning we did do like a short list of like rough ranges for stuff. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while since the first episode, actually. It's actually pretty neat. We're already on number 9. I know we had a missed week or 2.
Yeah, and I think that I think it was 2 or 3, maybe 4, somewhere in there. We went through and just kind of gave some ppm recommendations to not go over for the most part. And we talked about, because we were talking about the difference between flour and and veg. So that's kind of how we were talking about what the levels would be. Because really in veg, you don't necessarily need, you don't need large amounts of anything really to veg plants. But when you start getting into flours, and you start getting into heavier dosing, so obviously that, I think, is how the conversation came about. So we were talking about what the fish safe levels were, for your main water. So anybody who's looking for that stuff can go go watch those earlier episodes to check that out. And then, like you're saying, maybe we can do, a specific episode around like phosphorus, potassium, calcium, nitrogen. So, I mean, obviously nitrogen for aquaponics growers, nitrogen is, as long as you have a healthy system, it's taken care of. You usually have more than you need. So that's usually not an issue. It's usually the last two, and then your macro nutrients that end up needing to be supplemented at some point in some fashion. And so for me, obviously I'm doing worm tea, and then just a couple of things that we had here. I have the maxi crop, which I think I've used like twice. But for the outdoor grow, I've used it quite a bit though, as both maxi crop and just I think what they just said was bulk kelp, which is not that much different than maxi crop. I know they go through and do a treatment on it of some kind. I haven't found out a lot about what it is that they do to it, but
they remove the sodium from it.
Your microphone was breaking up. I didn't understand you.
Oh, they removed the sodium from it. I'm not 100% sure how they do it, but I think they dehydrate it and then flush it and then dehydrate it again or something like that. I'm not 100% sure how that works.
Right. So I've used that extensively in teas for the outdoor garden, and like blood meal has been another one that I've used quite a bit just for like top dressing and watering in. So different types of raw supplements like that. And I've never dosed any of that stuff in the aquaponics system though. But the maxi crop I've used probably, I think I want to say like 2 or 3 times now. I used it in the last indoor grow. So I'll probably use some of it too as I get into heavy flower in the outdoor this year too. Just kind of boost it up, play with it a little bit, and yeah, seemed to work fine. I know a lot of other people use it, so I wasn't really concerned about that. I just dosed relatively low levels right in with my worm tea, just mixed it right in, and then let it sit for about 24 hours, bubble it up. I've used it as foliar spray. Seems to work pretty well. Maybe we could do an episode around that too. Different things like, what things you have to do to make a foliar spray effective, because obviously it's absorbing directly into the plant as opposed to the roots, and there's a couple of things that at least that I learned in research that you can do through aerated teas that or foliar sprays, aerated teas, that kind of stuff might be a good thing. Different things that you can supplement in that way. Like I know a lot of people ask about Epsom salt. I get that question like once a week, I guess. And I know we talked about it in at least 2 or 3 different episodes from that. So, oh yeah, a question over here in the chat.
Sorry, my thing crashed.
The Baron of San Diego. What's up, man?
Specifically meaning for GRZ Aquaponics. The question was why trying to wake up my own super soil using Subcool's recipe as a template. I'm correct in assuming I can remove the end. Yeah, you would want to remove all the end supplements. Well, you don't have to remove all of them. So when I do mine, I still add worm casings. And the reason why I have worm casings is that plant in the first 1 to 2 weeks when you first put it in using dual root zone, that first 1 to 2 weeks needs a boost of nitrogen, or if you have a newer system, but mainly that first 2 weeks when that plant's still getting its main root system established and getting, sending its deeper roots down to the bottom where the water is and getting established on the upper part, it really, really helps to get the roots to run across that soil layer. I've found versus not putting it in, so I still do put worm casings in, or the other one I'll do is instead of worm casings, sometimes I'll do fish casings where I take my solids filter and I'll take all the fish waste from that and I'll put that out in the sun on like a plastic tray until it bakes, and then I'll take that and I'll grind it up and I'll mix that in with the soil, and that works really well too. It's basically the same thing as worm casings. But yeah, so you want to definitely cut back your nitrogen to about 1/4 of what you would otherwise in your recipe.
Yeah, I wouldn't put other than castings like you were saying or casing.
Yeah.
I would definitely remove anything nitrogen related because you're just not going to need it. And it just build up in your system can become an issue relatively quickly. So I wouldn't have any of that. And then next question.
As long as your DO, so he had a question about if dosing MaxiCrop plus iron, he says it's causing cloudiness, which he's attributing to bacterial bloom, and he's wondering if that can hurt the DO levels. If you have really good aeration, you have, 2 to 4 air stones, well, anything above like 200 gallons, you need to have 4 air stones in that thing, and you can't over aerate that fish tank. To making sure that you have real good aeration there, and you're not going to have a problem. As long as worst case scenario, the fish can go hang out by the air stones if you really overdosed it much. But as long as you have plenty of air stones directly in your fish tank, you shouldn't have much of an issue with at least the bacterial bloom. It's mostly algae blooms that you have to worry about with the DO levels, and those are really easy to prevent if you keep a shade cloth over your fish tank that allows it to breathe still, so you don't end up with like a sealed in situation, and just covering up all your exposed water to light with the shade cloth helps quite a bit.
I suppose if you dosed a lot of MaxiCrop, you might see some tinting to your water, like especially if it's really getting out of your sump, which is fine, for it to clog up your sump or change the color of it. And like you were saying, it's fine for the plants, but for the fish, I don't think I would be overly concerned about it unless, like you were saying, it was pretty extreme, I think, before it caused an issue. What do you think? I don't even remember. I know we talked about it, but I think we talked about the max ppms on that was like, did we say like 120 or something like that?
For which one?
Well, if he's adding MaxiCrop, that's potassium.
Yeah. No, you can put your potassium as high as 200 without killing the fish or anything like that.
You were breaking up there. I can hear you.
You could push your potassium like past 200 without harming the fish. I know there's a guy in Colorado. He goes post on Reddit under the name Cisco, SYSCO, I think, or something like that, on Reddit. He posts in Aquaponic Chronic too, and he dumps a ton of potash into his system, way more than I've seen anyone else. And he's got a tilapia in there. I'm sure he's running close to 300 or 400 ppms of potassium with how much he's dosing. So wow. That tilapia is living just fine. So I've never pushed it much up. I think the highest I've pushed is maybe 160, 180, maybe flirting with 200. The highest I've seen anyone else do it is about 280, and their fish were still alive. I don't know if I'd be comfortable keeping them that high, but you don't really need to push it much past like 180, 200 anyway.
I'm sure it depends a lot on how much you value your fish too. Like,
yeah,
I really don't give a crap about them or how fast they grow. If you're doing like if you're trying to grow out catfish to sell to eat or something like that, then or even just to eat them yourself, if you're concerned about growth rates and things like that, I'm definitely not the person to ask about that. I don't. Honestly, my fish are ornamental for the most part, fertilizer machines. I do have some catfish that I am going to harvest this time that I got from somebody here locally. But other than that, if you really care about like the growth rates of your fish and I don't know, maybe their overall happiness or experience in life, that might be a concern. But I don't think I'd be too worried about it. And then maybe the only thing I'd be concerned about with a large algae bloom would be like you were saying, the air consumption. And not being able to have as much dissolved oxygen in your tank might be the only thing that would be, I would say, like life-threatening.
So we have a giveaway from last week too. We'll do KDAC 247. I'm going to message you on here, but if you watch the podcast, shoot me an email to ponics@gmail.com, and I will get you a care package, courtesy of Recharge or Atria. We have a couple of different things, so we'll get together with you and see what you'd like, and then we'll have a giveaway for next week as well. So for as far as the giveaways go, we'll have hopefully for the foreseeable future at least have something to give away every week. Big shout out to realgrowers.com giving us some Recharge to give out, and be sure to check them out. And shout out to Atria Aquaponics for giving us some aquaponic nutrients to give out as well. Big thank you to both of them for allowing us to do that and giving us some stuff to give away. And shout out to Keto Life as well. We're working on a project for y'all that we'll hopefully be able to reveal here in a little bit. Y'all will really like it. But they've been a big sponsor of the show, and they're going to be, when I get back to Colorado, they have a whole bunch of goodies for us to give away, which is basically what I'm getting at. So I have some stuff to give away from them when I get back to Colorado. There's another company I have to give away some stuff from. I forget what the name of it is. It's a pesticide company. It's kind of an organic pesticide company. I'll make sure I plug them again when I get back home. They were kind enough to send me some stuff while I've been away. So we'll have some more giveaways when I get back to the States here in June. And trying to see what else we had on here. I think that's most everything for this week. Did you have anything? Oh, the other thing I want to add is I posted some more videos of aquaponic, or not even aquaponic, just a ganja farm up in the hills. I posted some flower videos, a bundle of about 4 pounds. It looks all nice and neat. I have a sensibilia from the mountains. And, I don't know. It looks about 4 pounds, allegedly, and might be much later. It might just be 2 ounces. Sometimes the camera can be deceiving. You know how that works.
Camera adds 10 pounds, right?
Camera adds 10 pounds to every little piece of weed that's on the camera, as we all know.
Especially on
yeah. But yeah, so I'll have some more videos of some other grows down here, both aquaponic and non-aquaponic for you guys before I leave, if everything goes as planned. And yeah, definitely be sure to, if you, I guess we'll start to roil up here unless you have anything else.
No, I think that's it for right now. I'll have, like I said, hopefully, actually, I think that's what I'm just getting those texts about is I think my lumber is going to be here in the next 15 minutes or so. So hopefully I'll be, next week I'll have some more videos and stuff up. We can talk about the outdoor will be set up and kind of check that out. And yeah, other than that, that's pretty much going to be, thanks for the Baron of San Diego over here for tuning in live. We always appreciate live questions. So thanks for that. Hopefully we'll see. Who was the other guy that was in here before? I don't remember his name. I think Brian.
The other person. I'm not sure.
We had a couple people. Anyway.
My thing went away when I reloaded. But yeah. So let's do a shout out to that Oregon group that's putting a lot of efforts together too.
Oh yeah. So the Oregon. It's Right to Grow USA is the name of the group. It's on Facebook. So Right to Grow -USA. Sandy Diesel, I think is how you say her name. I'm probably slaughtering that too. Who knows? Sandy and Scotty have done a lot of work to be able to raise a lawsuit against Jackson County that has also been duplicated into other ones. So yeah, it's really been great to have them on our side and get the lawsuit filed. And basically, we just had a local election here, and one of the main council members that was causing us problems got replaced. Probably not really by anybody better, but at least it goes to show that we did a lot of work to make sure that he did not get reelected, and he didn't, which is obviously good and bad, and that the person that replaced him may not be any better than what we started with, but nothing else, at least it shows that groups like hers can organize and can get people out of office if they continue to have the same policy. Because in the end, it's not about who disagrees, it's about what laws have come down and how those are enforced. And you know, everybody can think whatever they want about whatever they want, as long as the legislation that's been passed by the people is maintained. So you can have your own personal opinion about how medical marijuana is a farce or whatever else, as long as you know, don't use that interpretation to replace the intention of a bill that was put out by the state. And that's essentially what happened here, was that the state had no intention of counties moving forward with banning medical marijuana grows on, or regulating it any way whatsoever. And personal opinion and desire has gotten to the point where they were able to interpret it in a way that allowed them to do what they wanted. And now they're gone. So hopefully they will realize that they can disagree as much as they want to, as long as you don't try to twist your own personal views into legislation that was really meant to do something completely the opposite.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. If you guys are interested, or you guys have a need in the aquaponic consulting services, hit me up at ponics.com. Otherwise, try not to plug that too much. And then check out my channel over at Ponics on YouTube. And you can email me at potentponics@gmail.com. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, guys, check me out on AP Meds on there, the Aquaponic Cannabis Growers Group on Facebook. You can look us up there also. And yeah, see you guys next week. Hopefully we'll have some more content for you, and maybe we'll pick a nutrient profile to go through. Like maybe we'll start with phosphorus or something like that.
Yeah, I'll try to start that up and get that all broken down. That'll be a little easier for me too once I get back to the States, because it'll have a little more time to do on computer stuff rather than running around like a maniac.
Laptops get old fast, right?
Yeah, especially one where the wireless or the Wi-Fi card is occasionally finicky, which you'll occasionally have to see. So I'll be happy to get back to my big rig when I get back. So, all right, guys, thanks everyone for watching.
Have a good one.